I will introduce Konstantinos Papakonstantinou. He is a friend of mine who I've known for many years, but also a colleague, and he is the CEO of a startup that I'm involved in called Sentient, that is aiming to diagnose prostate cancer from urine alone. That means no biopsies, no other invasive technologies or procedures. And we also have in the audience here Dr. Adam Feldman, who is a practicing urologist at MGH. He's also part of Sentient, and he will give also a speech about how important it is to do early cancer detection. So Konstantinos' talk is called Why We Need a Non-Biomarker Diagnostic, and you are now going to be hearing from a CEO who is properly a deep science dive CEO. He has his MBA from Harvard Business School, and I've met a lot of MBAs from Harvard Business School, and I wasn't very impressed until I met Konstantinos. He's the real deal. He really, truly took science to heart, and he's hanging out with a bunch of us scientists and doctors, and he is absolutely indistinguishable from us in his technical expertise at this point. Without having any formal education in science past probably high school or maybe undergrad, he's now operating at the same level as experts in the field who have been doing it for decades. So he is an example of another pluripotent individual that could be sitting at home doing something completely that they've mastered already, making a ton of money. Instead, they're challenging themselves to bring this to humanity, because the truth is we're not just powered by the philanthropy of it, it's also a lot of fun to challenge yourself these ways. So Konstantinos, please take it away.
Thank you. Can you see me? Can you see the presentation?
Yes, we can, and we can see you too. It's perfect.
So the company is Sentient, but I don't want to talk about the company too much. I wanted to talk about some of the innovations that are happening within the company. And then if anybody has questions, happy to answer them. How we got started is that we saw a very big problem, and there are too many biopsies out there. And the problem is that the diagnostics that we have are pretty inaccurate for urologists to base their decisions on them. So they end up not using them, and they go down the path of a biopsy. Specifically in the case of prostate cancer, I had some personal experiences with my family. And essentially, the way it works is once men turn 50 years old, they're recommended to take a blood test that's called the PSA test, and it's a screening test. If you have a high PSA reading, then you go to your urologist, and many cases end up in a biopsy. And if you're positive, you go down a clinical pathway. If you have no cancer, the biopsy is negative, you're not free. You have to screen again. You go back, you take another PSA. If it's high, you have to do another biopsy. So there are many people that have multiple biopsies. And just on the right, you can see that the statistics are pretty amazing. There are 25 million PSA tests in the US alone every year, out of which 3 million men with high PSA readings. That results in 1.3 million biopsies, and 80% of those show no cancer. When you have a biopsy that shows no cancer, you're thinking there should be a diagnostic to avoid the biopsy, at least avoid the unnecessary biopsies, if we can detect that there is no cancer there. Essentially, we're poking people who have no cancer. And the problem is that the current diagnostics are either too expensive, they're too expensive and inaccurate. It's both. So the solution that we're coming up with at Sentient is that we saw, Andreas has done a lot of research with dogs, and he knows how they're smelling cancer. He's an expert in olfaction. So we're mimicking how dogs are sniffing out cancer with sometimes more than 99%, higher than 99% accuracy. So what we're doing is we're combining the olfaction principles. So we're not looking at specific molecules, because obviously dogs don't know science. They don't know chemistry. They don't analyze what's in the urine that they're smelling when they sniff out prostate cancer, when they're trained to sniff out prostate cancer. So they're looking for a character of scent. And that's how they can generalize from one cancer to another, or from one population to another with minimal training. Then we're also combining that with GCMS analysis of urine VOCs, which essentially emulates what the dogs are sniffing. And this is a faster, cheaper, and more convenient approach that can be done at home or can be part of your annual physical exam. And then innovative AI that analyzes the raw signal in order to emulate the dog's brain. So we have the dog's nose being the GCMS, and the dog's brain is the AI that analyzes that and essentially mimics how they smell cancer. Because obviously everybody would love to have 99% accuracy and have dogs sniff their urine samples, but that's not practical. The best thing is to have it mechanized and use technology to emulate that. The way to do that is to take a non-biomarker approach. And this is what I wanted to highlight more. The biomarker, every analytical tests, diagnostics that are currently in the market, they take the approach that we're looking for biomarkers. So it could be proteins, it could be circulating tumor DNA that is in the blood that's released from the tumor. And they collect a lot of samples. It could be 500 samples, 1,000 samples, and they run essentially a regression. They try to identify a key that cleaves the data between cancer positive and cancer negative. And what happens is that they can be successful in their small sample set, but once you open up the sample set, they break down. What we are doing is we're not looking at specific biomarkers, which has a lot of benefits, and I will talk about them in a little bit. But our approach is a little bit like what you see on the right, the picture on the right, which is how we all learned how to sketch by connecting numbers. And we are forming memories of cancer. So we're training on memories, and we keep training, and we get better and better. So whereas other diagnostics accuracy falls over time, because they're static, our diagnostic improves over time. And that's the power of a non-biomarker approach, which has many applications and can be done in many different things. We're taking the non-biomarker approach here specifically for prostate cancer, but we can generalize for a multi-cancer early detection test. Now, why do we need a non-biomarker approach? There are certain situations where biomarker diagnostics can work. However, there are four main issues. What something smells of doesn't tell us what it's made of. Different VOC compositions can produce the same scent. That's number one. Number two is that the existing diagnostic tests, when you're looking for a key, that key is static. So you're running your test on 500 samples or 1,000 samples, you identify what cleaves the data cleanly, and that's your key, and you can't change that. So no matter how much data you get in the future, over 10, 20, 30 years, you're not changing the key. And inevitably, we know that these keys break down, whereas a non-biomarker approach can evolve over time. Also, biomarker-driven AI is subject to overfitting. So we can learn very well from the set of data that we have, but once new data, we introduce an AI solution or a key to new data, it can very easily break down. And many diagnostics are invasive or expensive. When you take a biomarker approach, the easiest way is to go after urine instead of blood, because then you need a phlebotomist, you have to go somewhere, whereas urine, you can do it different from your home. However, VOCs, there are thousands and thousands of VOCs, but everybody's sample contains only, let's say 300 to 500. So identifying biomarkers overlapping with a small data set is almost impossible, and that's why many of them fail. And that's pretty much what I had. I hope that was interesting, but I'm open to questions.
Thank you so much, Konstantinos. Every time Konstantinos said non-biomarker, you should in your head insert the word olfactory. Okay, because yes. Olfactory is by definition not looking at the composition of the signal, it's looking at the scent character of the signal. This is the biggest lesson I've learned in 18 years of doing this. I was doing it wrong for the first maybe 10 years. I was assuming that the nose analyzes, that it gives you a list of molecules by name and concentration like a GCMS would do. It does not do that. Indeed, the signal is conferred by the molecules, but it's not the molecules. The signal is not the molecules. The same way that photons do confer the signal of the Mona Lisa, but the Mona Lisa is not photons, all right? And if I just give you a list of photons by wavelength, it doesn't mean that you understand what color or shape they're making. So in that analogy, what we found with Konstantinos is that there's a lot of philosophical and sort of historically baked in assumptions that are incorrect. We all think, including the people working on olfaction, we always ask, oh, what molecule is this thing sniffing? What is the signature of cancer? And they expect the answer in the form of a list of molecules. Cancer is a many metabolic pathway disease. It leaves a lot of metabolites, a lot of different molecules. So it's very difficult to even assume, or let alone expect that you can have a definite signature. And for 40 years, we've been doing this. The planet, I mean, not me, but I've been only doing it for about 20 years. For the 40 years that people have been doing breath analysis and other volatilome analyses, it's always the same story. You can always find a key that cleaves a data set into positive and negative, but it's overfitting. And once the data set expands, the key breaks down. Okay, so with this, let me put it out to people for questions. Konstantinos, yes? No, I have a question for Konstantinos. Konstantinos, in doing this, in being the CEO of a startup that is proposing to mimic dogs to diagnose disease, what has been the most difficult thing when you talk to people? What have you found the most irritating or difficult thing?
Oh, there are so many. Many people don't believe in that. So one is the non-biomarker approach. This is something that when you come in a field that has used biomarkers for 40 years, and it's waking up with a lot of startups, a lot of interest, but with a biomarker approach, saying we will follow a non-biomarker approach, there's a lot of skepticism and a lot of questions. So there's a lot of education that has to happen. First, what does it mean? And second, why it's very important and what are the benefits it confers?
That's right. And do we have any other questions from the audience? Or is there anything from the web? I cannot access it right now. If not, no, we're all good. We're getting there all clear. Then thank you so much, Konstantinos. Let's thank our speaker again.